Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Culture Core Podcast Election Series Edition. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about happenings over the past, month since we've had this show, as well as going a little bit more in depth with Andrew Yang, since there seemed to be a greater degree of interest when we talked about him last time. That being said, as of today, 5/27/2019, we have 23 Democrats running for the presidency and still only 2 Republicans, Trump and Weld. Still whispers of possibly Kasich, but we shall see on that issue. Since last time, Biden has officially entered the race. And it looks like Bennett is a new candidate as well. De Blasio also is one that I did not notice before, so we must have lost someone. We must have lost someone in there. I think Ryan might have dropped out, actually. Nope, Ryan's still there. Let's see. Biden, Bennett is new, Booker is there. Bullock is new. Buttigieg is still there. Castro is there. Delaney is there. Gabbard is there. Gillibrand, Harris, Hickenlooper, Inslee, Klobuchar, Messiaen, talked about him last time. Moulton, O'Rourke, Ryan, It looks like everyone else is still there. Huh. Even though Benet and Bullock appear to be new, we are up to 23 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So, that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 more Republicans were thrown into the, or not Republicans, Democrats were thrown into the mix, and maybe 1 Republican if the Republican Party feels that they need to do that when the time comes. I'm sure they've been planning for a while a contingency plan in case Trump does not pan out for whatever reason. With the 25% tariff increase recently, I'm sure that the effects of that will impact the presidency. I know that it's affected farmers pretty intensely, and that the government has actually subsidized farmers to help offset those tariffs, which is, in a way, is kind of a form of government help, which is not something Republicans are usually fond of, but regardless, moving on. Like I said, we're going to be talking about Andrew Yang on this episode, but before doing that, we just went over who's new to the campaign, which includes Bennett and possibly Bullock. I don't see him from last month on that list, so I'm being led to assume that he was not on it either. So here's some of the most recent polling data from the website. I'll put this in the description too. RealClearPolitics.com e-polls, and they pull from many different websites, but I tend to average the different polling locations. And generally, the polls are close enough, or within the same standard deviation enough to be able to be, the same. They're not. The polling methods, for the most part, are pretty consistent and thorough. But I'm sure that individuals out there could find contentions with polls. People always can, especially with this most recent abortion issue that's been coming up across the country. So, that being said, since Biden's announcement that he was going to run back in April, his polls have only went up with about a 10-point drop back in mid-May. So he's still polling fairly high, and Bernie is actually just about where he started off at the beginning. He went up a bit, gained a lot of ground, and then petered out a bit. And this is just polling data. And we're not going to put too much stock in polling, but again, it is a semi-good gauge for seeing where people stand in the public eye. That being said, Warren has consistently been polling third place behind these two. Harris has jumped up and also is remaining consistently high up there. And Buttigieg is also fairly high in the polls. Yang and Gabbard, two individuals that I've been kind of rooting for, are either not appearing in polls or polling at 1 or 2% fairly consistently. Now, Yang has managed to stay alive in the polls mostly, for the most part. Early in May, he dropped off the radar for a moment. Same with Gabbard, but Gabbard's appearing at 1%-ish, which is really, it's unfortunate, because the issues they're bringing up are very important and kind of pivotal for where the nation's heading. So these are important issues like UBI and the fact that the economy is changing from a more automated, more service-based. It's something to be considered, and UBI is a semi-decent answer to that, in my opinion. And then Gabbard in pulling out of these foreign wars, which are just draining thousands of dollars from the American taxpayers and justifying all sorts of just not great funding and pools of money which people essentially steal from, and just a lot of corruption stems from many of these issues, especially with foreign wars and regime change wars. So that being said, these are how the polls look, and Biden has surged ahead but kind of dropped off a little bit later on. So for the next part, we're going to open up the candidates cheat sheet, if I can find it. Here we are. I gotta take off these. Thank you for your patience. There we are. Okay. So, this is a good look at who is running during the, except for a couple individuals that are new to the race. I have not put on here yet, just because I feel like it's time, even though the elections are not for another year and some change, there needs to be some focus being created at this point, because 23 is a pretty big number for, you go into a voting booth. 23 is a high number of options for the average voter, and there's about 3 big points you can attach easily to each person as you walk into the polling booth to make quick, easy decisions. And going down this list, to this cheat sheet, I'm going to add those core issues probably to the right column in the next episode. But as far as this episode goes, this is just a look at their career, the state they're from, their campaign entry date, political title, and age, as well as the party on the left side. Andrew Yang is interesting, namely because he has not been involved in politics directly. He did get his undergrad degree in economics and poli-sci and a law degree. However, he entered corporate finance law, and, well, I guess we can just start talking about his career. So, Andrew Yang's slogan for his campaign is Humanity First, which underlines his talking point that artificial intelligence and automation are going to start pushing jobs out of the American economy, and in fact already have, which to a certain extent is certainly true. So it's a pretty strong slogan to run off of. Next episode, we're going to be talking more about Tulsi Gabbard and her background and slogan a little bit more. But back to this. Andrew Yang was born in upstate New York in 1975. Parents immigrated from Taiwan in the 60s and met in grad school. Father was a researcher at IBM, generating 69 patents over his career. It's very accomplished. And his mother, according to his website, was the systems administrator at a local university. Now, on Wikipedia, it's interesting because it also mentions that she went on to become an artist, and what else did it say? Yeah, it says his mother graduated with a master's degree in statistics and later became an artist. So that's a little bit more than what he says on his website, that his mom was the systems administrator at a local university. It's like, yes, that was her job. So I guess that's fair. It just didn't mention the fact that she wanted to become an artist, because I guess he's aiming for a certain demographic, and mentioning those two things may not be the biggest hook for people, which is understandable. Anyway, goes on to say his brother and him grew up pretty nerdy, quote-unquote, believing in the American dream. That's why my parents came here. That's cool. Studied econ and poli-sci at Brown, and then went to law school at Columbia. Worked as a corporate lawyer, realized it wasn't for him, and launched his own small company, which he does not mention what it was, but he says, in the early days of the internet, that didn't work out. Then worked for a healthcare startup, where I learned how to build a business from more experienced entrepreneurs. And so this firm he left, which I'm assuming he just didn't like because it wasn't what he was expecting from the work world, or whatever reason, he left that company and didn't want to work there, and launched stargiving.com. And I would be interested to look, well, why not? We can go over to the Wayback Machine here. Let's go over to the Wayback Machine. Pulling it up in a minute here, but yeah, that the website that he went into founding was called StarGiving.com, a website for celebrity-affiliated philanthropic fundraising. So just asking celebrities for money for charities, essentially. And it raised some capital from investors, but folded in 2001. Afterward, Yang joined a healthcare software startup, MMF Systems Incorporated, as its vice president and third hire. So that's a little bit more information about his healthcare startup that he became involved in. So for this Wayback Machine, we're going to go back to the year 2000, October 17th, at 5:11. It's loading. Add this screen here to window capture. Yeah, here we are. So this is a look at his website. I'm gonna refresh this here. Okay, so it's interesting. You can't really see any of the images loading. Changing the world one click at a time. Donate to win. Where stars and charity click. Stargiver are service marks of... Okay. Jimmy V Foundation have dinner with ESPN sportscaster Dan Patrick. So basically just trying to set people up with famous people in order for them to, give money, essentially, for charities. Kind of a charity generating type deal, obviously. Looks like we might be getting some images. Click on a Stargiver image for more information. It's got Don Casey, dinner with Lakers. So a lot of sports and artists. Private set with singer-songwriter Edwin McCain. SLE Foundation, Mobile Animal Services and Help, fashion shoe with supermodel Nikki Taylor. Interesting. Well, if this website ever decides to load, we'll have to take a closer look at it. But for now, we'll just continue on down the line with Andrew Yang's career. So, he then went on to found the VFA, which created jobs by the thousands and continues to do amazing work across the country. But along the way, it became clear to him that job creation will not outpace the massive impeding job loss due to automation. Those days are simply over. And that is a quote from his website. So VFA is pretty cool. But one of the things he didn't mention, and I guess he must have worked for, after he worked for MMF, which is a healthcare software systems thing. I don't know the details, but you get the idea. He worked for a company called Manhattan Prep, which provides GMAT test preparation. And the company expanded from 5 to 69 locations and was acquired by Kaplan, which is a testing company, essentially, in December 2009. So he was a part of growing that from its roots, which is interesting. And that you can kind of see that influence with him working with test companies for students in his policies later down the line, because he mentions that in one of the books that he wrote, he talks about how they should cherry pick the best students from small towns and move them to larger cities so that they can contribute that resource to helping cities grow, and then naturally it would follow that they would give back to their local communities just because they're from small towns. But then after that, he went into the VFA. In his first year, VFA trained 40 fellows, and by 2017, more than 500 VFA fellows and alumni. So VFA was after the Manhattan deal, which was acquired by Kaplan. And VFA was an organization that helps entrepreneurs create jobs in cities like Baltimore, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, as well as many other Midwestern cities. And his UBI push is that every American adult over the age of 18 will get $1,000 a month, no strings attached, paid for by a new tax on the companies benefiting from most of the automation. So think Amazon, Walmart, Google. Some of the Google doesn't really produce anything, but companies that produce and move products and benefit from automation. That could be a number of companies. So, and that kind of caps up all of his career experience in a very short manner. And it looks like this website's not going to load, but we can go to the next capture here and see if we see anything else. But it's interesting to see where he started and where he ended up. That being said, Andrew Yang generally he's gaining some momentum. He's raised a lot of money. If you go to his website, he's raised about a million and a half, I believe, and is still rising in the ranks. And he will be debating in the Democratic primaries come next year. But yeah, those are kind of his big points, and we can add that to the cheat sheet here. I'll do that right now. I'm going to go in, insert a column to the right, issues column, UBI automation. He's also not a career politician, as you may have noticed. When you go over to these other candidates, you can check their voting records, you can check their career history. It's much more public-facing and transparent. With Yang, it's a little bit less so. But you can still see some of what he's done in his past. That being said, I will say that I've learned a little bit about Andrew Yang himself by reading a little bit more on his website and Wikipedia page, and kind of delving back into the Wayback Machine here about where he started and where he is now. And it's interesting. So what I thought was that since he's a businessman, he is kind of running off of the same mentality of or the same vein as Trump in a way. He if you go to his website, he says, the first thing you see is, let's disrupt the political system together. And that's a very Trumpian way of saying that. And I think he's going to attract a lot of libertarians. So I think that's the kind of connection that people see with that. And it's interesting, just to see that connection. But regardless, if this campaign doesn't work out for him, he still has received a lot of public recognition, which should help him in establishing, maybe he'll go back into the VFA, or maybe he'll do something new to help launch a business that helps create jobs around the country on this platform of automation is stealing jobs away by the thousands each year. So it's a win-win for him. He gets public recognition, or he makes it to the presidential finals and somehow snags the presidency, which is not looking, according to the polls, if you live and die by polls, it doesn't look very likely, but just based off of the issues alone, pretty sharp dude, pretty on the pulse, generally it seems like, and there have been a couple failures in his life, just like any other candidate on this list. But it's how the individual deals with those failures that really defines them. And I think that for him, I don't think he necessarily failed when it came to that first law firm he worked for, that corporate law firm. But it shows that he didn't at his core, he didn't like working with an organization like that from the start, because he didn't see value in it. So it says something about him. And he wanted to kind of start and do his own thing, entrepreneurial wise. Now, I don't really see. He learned as he went. He had an idea. He went with, we're gonna hook up people with celebrities and invite them to dinner and raise funds that way. So it was a non-profit idea. But from that, he moved on to creating a healthcare software company, co-founded it, and that was pretty successful. Then he went on to work for Manhattan, which helps students prepare for the GMAT, and that helped him learn about how talent can be utilized in hiring people and generating jobs in the right regions, the right places, from the right people. And then he took that and expanded it to the VFA, which he quickly grew into something that started creating jobs by the thousands around the country. He got recognized by Obama. And then he's just using that momentum from his early experience in entrepreneurship to kind of build towards the presidency. And I think it's interesting that he majored in law and poli-sci and econ, because that shows that that's what he wanted to do. But somewhere along the line, people were like, no, that's not going to work. So, but he's clearly got the energy level and know-how to run a presidential campaign. So we'll see. We will see. His motivating factor comes with his slogan, very well packaged. It's a good issue to bring up that'll stay within the American collective conscious for the next, when he gets on that debate stage and major news broadcasters start broadcasting that more generally, more of the American population will hear about it. But for now, it's just the people on the internet. I think that in the next 20 years, more people will be watching news online, less so on TV, so the demographics will change, but we'll see. We will see. Thank you for watching this episode of the Culture Core podcast. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you've got your own opinions on Andrew Yang, please post them in the comment section below, and I will see you all next time when we will talk about Tulsi Gabbard and update everyone on the polling and other updates to the presidential election for 2020.